Shalom, welcome. This is Avraham Shira. And our erev Shabbat class is going to touch on some amazing things. We decided to change the view of the background. Here you see the working side of the office, not the praying side. And today we're looking at three portals above time. Shabbat, the temple, and the Tzaddik. Now, each of those is a different aspect, a different portal to this place above time. Shabbat itself is a moment in time each week. We've learned before, it's a moment that occurred in the beginning of creation that continually returns. So this Shabbat, we're not going to be experiencing just, Parshat V'etchanan 2020, 5780. We're experiencing an aspect of the original Shabbat. And the idea of the Tzaddik, the righteous person, is the portal above time through soul. That the soul itself, when it is a purified and whole entity, becomes a portal, in other words, a channel through which we can experience something above time. And the third aspect is the temple. The temple is the idea above time in space. That there is this building, there was this building, there will be another one. That this building is a transcendental space where when you enter it, you leave a large portion of yourself behind, and you enter a place that really takes you above space and time. So, again, we are looking at different windows through which to access timelessness. The timelessness in the soul, the timelessness in space, and of course in the time itself, which is Shabbat. Okay. Now Rabbi Nachman said that since the Shekhinah was exiled and the temple was destroyed, which we mourned yesterday all over the world, the loss of the first and second temples, and all the other tragedies that happened to the Jewish people along these thousands of years. That building was built to the very precise prescriptions that correspond to the measurements of the upper world. Now you say, well, wait a minute, isn't the upper world without space, without time? It's not bounded by anything, so how can you tell me that the temple was built with measurements from above space? There are no measurements above space. Well, not exactly. What the Ramchal teaches us is that the measurements above space are based on the parameters of God's name. And the measurements that are derived from His name become physical. So there is a transcendence from a physical dimension to a spiritual dimension, where the idea of space does not impede upon our understanding of how a name is a collection of sounds represented by letters that have numerological significance. When we project the name into space, it becomes a mikdash. It becomes another form of the divine tree of life, or what we call the Tzelem Elokim, the image of God, which each person, if he merits, will receive that form of God upon himself. Now we're given that in potential at birth, and we have to build it in life. Okay, so these three portals, these three avenues through which we can experience something of timelessness, the Rebbe says, since the destruction of the temple, the main place that you will find the Shekhinah is at the graves of the righteous, at the Kivrei Tzaddikim, where the holy people are buried, especially the Ma'arat Machpelah, down here to the south of a few miles, where the patriarchs and the matriarchs are buried. that is one of the places when you walk into that space, you should feel different. You should feel something left outside the door, and something is happening. Your prayer changes, your thought patterns change. You become deeper just by being there. Your mind opens. You can see with your inner eye. You can hear things that you wouldn't normally hear. All of that is part of the experience of Shekhinah, divine presence. It's operating at our highest level. And of course, the Kotel Ma'ariv, the Western Wall, is another place where the Shekhinah dwells in exile. And the Kevra of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in Meron, up north in Israel, is also a place that's known for that. The graves of other righteous people around the country are hotspots, literally, for transcendent moments that take us out of time. Now, some other ways that you can experience that, well, one way is that you see birds circling. The Zohar says, if you see birds circling over a place, now I'm not talking about buzzards, those hungry guys, those vultures. I'm talking about the different types of birds that we have here in Eretz Israel. I don't know all their names, but they circle around these holy places, like the Kotel on Friday night. I've never been there where I didn't see birds circling. It took me 20 years before I found that Zohar. Also in Meron, on Lag BaOmer, you see the birds are circling. And in other places, it will happen. That's one sign. Now, other signs, for example, are that when you walk in, your lips start to vibrate, like you want to pray without even knowing what you're going to pray. That's another sign that the Shekhinah is really nearby. Because the Shekhinah, when it touches us, it makes us reach for her. You see, it's this cyclical energy field where we touch the divine and then we want to touch, and so on and so forth. So when it touches us, we want to touch it. And it comes out chiefly through the mouth, through our very tongue and lips, in the form of expression. Now, if you're particularly sensitive, you might immediately want to weep or burst out with amazing joy. It depends really on each person and his kli, his vessel. When you touch something divine, it will bring out the part of you. So, there's this very immature kind of spiritual pursuit. I want to find God. I want to find the infinite and the eternal, but really, I need to find it through me, through my very vessel, through the way I think, through the way I laugh, through the way I speak, through the way I hear, through the way I smell. Each of these senses is connected all the way back through the powers, the filters we call the Sefirot. And when they are enhanced or illuminated, then all of a sudden, all of us works better. All the different parts that we have down the entire span or array of traits we call the tree of life. Okay, another thing that can happen is you close your eyes and you feel like you're falling. That's not a bad thing. That's why it's called descending into the Merkava. Descending doesn't mean that you're falling off a bridge, right? God forbid. But it means that when you close your eyes, you suddenly have the experience of going down. Now, a lot of us think of going to Hashem as going up. But actually, no, it's really the opposite. It's the feeling of going down into a tunnel. And there are many things you can see in that tunnel, depending, again, on your vessel, on how pure you are, on the work you've done, on the mission you have. There are many, many parameters that will determine what you see and what you hear when you go into that transcendental moment in space. Okay, so that happens especially at the Kotel Ma'aravi, and we said in other Kivrei Tzaddikim, because we don't have the actual temple. But when we had the temple, you can understand why the Gemara says there were millions of prophets. It doesn't mean that everybody writes a book of their prophecies for the future generations, but it means that there are millions of people who have the ability to see and to speak the future, whether consciously or unconsciously. Now, you can have that experience today if you listen to people properly. And some people, I've had people come running into the Beit Midrash at Nar Shalom in Jerusalem and say things to me out of the thin air. And I was like, just like my eyes opened up like they are now. And I was like, okay. Because they spoke precise words that had exactly to do with where I was holding or what I needed to work on at that given moment in time. And it's happened so many times, I won't even talk about it here. But personal details, family details, things that about the future, the past, and they don't even know they're saying it, which is almost more outrageous. So all of that happens when, you're close to that portal. Now, let's say you don't believe it. Well, if you don't believe it, then it's like you're stepping in the elevator, but you're not pushing the button. You ever done that? Forget to push the button. You're standing there in the elevator waiting for something to happen, and nothing happens. Oh, maybe I need to push this button, to the floor I need to go to. So the button is your faith. That is the switch that turns on the whole system. Now, it doesn't mean I have to have faith that I'm going to have a transcendental moment here, just like Avraham Shira said in his class. No, it means that you'll have a moment that God wants you to have then for you. And that's all you need. And because each person is different, and his track is different, and his life is unfolding according to the divine providence that's woven into his experience or her experience. So now this experience of the timelessness of the place, like we just spoke of, or Shabbat, which is time itself, we enter a 24-hour period, 25-hour period, where you are not concerned with the outer world. This is also a way to enter timelessness because we're stripping away the things that attach us to time. Oh, here comes my timelessness, my little grandson just poking in. Benjamin, come say hi to the people. There he is. Benjamin. Yes. It's the cream of the cream. It's what we signed up for, folks. I bless you all to have wonderful grandchildren and to spend as much time with them as you can, especially when they're little like this and they're so sweet. Yeah? Okay. So Shabbat is the place where we can also leave behind these fetters, these I think of the image of, when they put somebody in chains, because the physical world wants to do that to us. It wants to chain our mind to thinking only about now, here and now, and what we need to do, what I have to do, what I'm obligated to do, what I might be called on to do. All these thoughts, they might be true, but they're not the boss. See, they're not the boss, but we let them become the boss. So in Shabbat, we drop those immediately. And that's why, on Shabbat, you'll hear religious Jews will say, no, we're not talking about that. I think it's Nish Shabbos Gred, right? It's not for Shabbos. Some Yiddish phrase that really is telling us, stay here in the now of the transcendental day of Shabbat. And so you see that entering the timelessness depends on leaving things behind. So there's space that we need to leave behind. There is actual responsibilities of time that we leave behind. And then there's the Tzaddik himself, the righteous person, whose soul, since it's already been fixed, becomes that channel that we connect to go to a higher level. Now you say, well, who's the Tzaddik? Well, all you have to do is choose whatever book that you love the best and attach to the words in his book, because his mind is in those words. You say, well, I need to see the man behind his desk in his suit with his hat. I'm sorry, you don't. Because he might not say anything. And then you'll get nothing. You might get a little bit. Seeing his face will also help. But what I find is that when I learn the book, when I open the book of Rabbi Nachman or the Rebbes of all the different schools, or the Gemara, or the Mishnah, those, you are taking in little pieces of their mind. And if you've taken enough of them, what happens is your mind becomes more like their mind. And their software becomes your software. So why wouldn't you want that? So when you open up a book, think of yourself as you're stepping into that mind, or you're inviting his mind into yours. And so this enables us to actually experience the timelessness of his soul. Because if you open up the Talmud and you start reading about Rabbi Akiva, and you know his story, and you know his mindset, and you know his struggles, his challenges, his victories, his defeats, and you take all of that in with his words, all of a sudden, you have a tiny, it's less than a second moment where you're not here. You're there. You're with him. And the same is true with all the great rabbis of the past and the great men and women that we don't even know their names because they're embedded in those books, or you don't know their stories. When you're sensitive enough, you can read somebody's name and sense who they are. And it just takes practice and time and refinement and patience and acceptance and peace, all those things we need anyways for this world. So let's take those qualities that we get from Shabbat at a place called Mikdash, at a place called the soul of the Tzaddik, which you have one of those too. Now you might not have accessed it very much, or you might have accessed it and fallen and come back and fallen and come back 1,000 times. That's all fine. That's exactly what we're supposed to do. Because we don't give up. The only day that you worry about it is when it's over. And, that's the way the soul advances. Forward, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Throughout the generations, this is the way it works. Now, I've read some material from the CIA and the KGB about what's called remote viewing. I'm sure some of you have heard about that and looked into that. And if you haven't, it might be quite eye-opening. But these, let's call them intelligence services, are very interested in gathering information in any way they can. And they have no problem with religious ideas and practices, because everything they do is on the sly. No one sees what they're doing. And for a fact, there are many books, and even today on YouTube, you can go and hear the lectures of psychics who spent great portions of their time working with the CIA, remote viewing, trying to find criminals, trying to find kidnapped victims, trying to find places where things were going to happen. This is documented. And after that, you hear it from the 10th person, this can't all be fake news, It can't all be just made up. But when you look at the Kabbalah and the tradition of Jewish meditation, and what's called Ruach HaKodesh means looking into the past, and what's called Nevuah means looking into the future. It's just fancier words for remote viewing. Now you say, well, that's not me. I'm not a psychic. I'm not there. And it's true, you're not. So what? But one moment of that experience, and you will have faith the rest of your life in the system that we live in. As the rabbis say, we're not prophets, but we are the sons of them. And sons means we are extractions of their genetics, of their spiritual potential. And I don't need to see what they saw. I need to see what God wants me to see. And I need to go where God wants me to go. And it could be forward or backward in time, depending on what I need to know. As a therapist, when I'm working with people, I'm constantly curious about the past. Of course, because that helps us set out understanding for the present and the future. But beyond the realm of psychology, we have the realm of reincarnation, past lives. And those areas of research are places to gain information. How reliable is it? How cogent is it? Understandable? How relevant is it to our everyday lives now? That all depends on the person. But I can tell you a few stories that happened to me and to others. So I recall that I had a job once working for an autistic fellow, and it was a hard job for me, and it really made me go through things that I had never even imagined existed on the planet, taking care of an autistic adult. And at a point I wanted to quit the job. Now this fellow's whole family had been wiped out in the Holocaust except his mother and his father. And after I decided I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna quit the job. I had a dream. And in the dream, I laid down and then I had another dream. Now if you've learned Masechet Brachot, which we've learned on Facebook, about 1.5 years ago, we learned the whole parak about dreams. Over there it's written that if you have a dream, and then in your dream you have another dream, that is a piece of divine inspiration. And so suddenly I was in my dream, and I was dragged off into a higher place. I promise you. It was like being shot in space. And suddenly I was in this dark hallway, and there was this murky kind of golden light. And all these faces were looking at me. And I'm telling you, I saw this fellow's grandparents, aunts, and uncles, and I was certain that they'd all been through the Holocaust, and they were all smiling at me, and the psychic message was, keep the job, do not quit. And I understood that they wanted me. Why did they care? They're in heaven. Their descendant is down here on earth, the poor guy, Miskane, he's an autist. And autism itself is a subject we could talk about in the light of Kabbalah. Maybe we'll do a Shira on it in Facebook because I was 14 years with this person. And I understood that, no, it was good for me to have this job, but it was also good for him. And that even his ancestors, well, you could see their faces looked like him. The men and the women, they all looked like one large family. And the Zohar says souls exist like clusters of grapes. That families literally are bunched together like grapes in heaven, and then they come down here in this world to do what they have to do. So that was one example of how you can experience above time in time. And of course that was because I needed information. It's all about the information you need. But when you turn to God for your information, why wouldn't He help you? If you really believe He's the source of all knowledge and information, which, at a certain point you come to that question. Either He knows everything or He knows nothing. To think that God is God and He only knows part of the story, I don't know what kind of God that is, but who needs to serve Him? Either He's got the whole story or none. Or it's all a big fairy tale and we're kidding ourselves. And after you have enough experiences, you can't kid yourself. And so, it's about that information that you need to access to answer the questions of your life. And this is why we pray, and this is why we meditate, and this is why we take note of our dreams and pay attention to what the rabbis say, because we need the information, and these are some of the channels that the information comes to us. And all of it is coming from above time, which is Shabbat, which is Mikdash, which is the soul of the Tzaddik. So we got to get attached to one righteous guy. Right, Benjamin? And we got to get attached to one righteous place. It might be, when I was in LA a long time ago, I used to walk through the graveyards in LA there were whole areas where Jews were buried. And it was a very overwhelming thing to see the thousands and thousands of people that had been there, that had come to this world and left. I felt there was a holiness there. It was holier than Sunset Boulevard, let's put it that way. Okay? The graveyards of LA. And, these things are there for us to attach to that higher point within ourselves. And ultimately, after you put in the time and you do the work, you know what? You carry those concepts with you. You carry that piece of your tzaddik with you, and it's alive. It's active in your consciousness. And you carry the idea of mikdash inside you, even though we don't have a mikdash yet. And we carry the idea of Shabbat with us, that all week long we can constantly be connecting to this idea of Shabbat. So it's coming here to Eretz Israel, and it'll be coming out there to the big wide world very soon. God should bless you all to take that time and that precious energy that you have and put it to something above time. And know what you need to know. A big problem that people have is they really don't know what they want to know. They're too vague. And if you're vague with God, God is like a little vague with us. And that's not good. Let's be specific, and you will get the answers you need to all the questions in your life. God bless all of you. We'll see you next week on Patreon, on Facebook, on YouTube, and all the outlets. And we're looking forward to doing a special class this week on conspiracies in the Bible. And we're going to use the Bible as our blueprint of how conspiracies work. And perhaps it'll teach us a little bit about some things going on today. So all of you should be blessed and happy and joyous. Shabbat Shalom.